All right, for those of you that aren't familiar with this already, this is my 1976 Ford F250 Supercab long bed IDI Swap project. I named it Red Green for the project name. For those of you familiar with it, you're probably on either my personal Facebook, Instagram, or on Ford Truck Enthusiasts following my build. This truck here I picked up for about 500 bucks, decided to go ahead and swap an IDI 6.9 liter into it, and came across a 1994 turbo. Now I'm not going to be really addressing this build right now. This will be in a future video, but just to give you an idea of why I'm filming an IDI engine and it doesn't look to be in an 80s truck, this is the reason why. What I do want to address today is Ford Factory turbo systems, and mainly go over what components you actually want to look for in your turbo system. I've seen a lot of them for sale lately for about $500 bucks, and a lot of components are actually missing. And I had a really good friend of mine, Zach, asked me what components he actually should be getting with his turbo set and what he should be looking for in looking at his turbo set, as far as inspection and, like I said, all the components that you should need and what you need to go ahead and put it onto your naturally aspirated engine. So I'm going to go ahead and go over that. Now, to keep me from blabbing or whatnot, you'll probably be hearing paper off in the wind. I'm going to break out my little nifty cheat sheet. So hopefully this will keep this video down to under an hour. Anyway, so what I'm looking at here, this is again a 1986 out of a 1987 6.9 liter IDI that I'm actually converting to a 7.3 94 turbo system, just to give it a little bit extra, you know, boost, whatnot, a little bit more power on the top. I'll do some other things on it later. So this is the actual AR82 Garrett T3 series turbo. Nothing really special. I haven't done anything to it yet. I have most of the factory components for it. So I'm just going to go ahead and go over the nomenclature with it, starting with the cold side. So to start with the cold side, what I have here is the air box. I do consider this part of the cold side because it is feeding the turbo. You have your lower air box here, which actually has your air inlet. Normally on an 80s, 90s truck, this would have a plastic air inlet that comes up into the firewall here, which I obviously don't have because I'm a 1970s truck and I'm not going to go that route. This air box does house your actual air filter, which I do not have, but it would fit inside this little groove right here. I like to run the K&N, so I'm waiting on mine to actually come in. The top piece of the air box I consider part of the air plenum because it is feeding the compressor side of the turbo. But that's pretty much what you're dealing with there. If I can actually do this with one hand, it looks like I might be able to without killing myself. You have, obviously, your air box. Again, I'm filling it with rags to keep spiders from coming in and trying to live in it. But I'll go ahead and pull these out. You just have 2 bolts down here that hold it on. Some IDI trucks came with studs down that area. I don't know what they were mounting there, but I pretty much just pull those studs out if they have it, and I'll run just bolts down to this part of the manifold to mount the box. I do prefer a bolt over a stud, or at least in this case. So now that I'm moving on to more of the parts of the cold side, you've got your compressor housing here. This is housing your actual compressor wheel and whatnot, and you have your compressor air inlet, obviously, that has a little boot that's you know, cutting down from the size of the plenum down to the turbo. Your actual, if I can get your compressor wheel in here without it going all blurry on me, that's the actual compressor wheel there. This is obviously connected to the hot side of the turbo. I'm not trying to make this that way. Just anybody knows what it is. If you need to find out about a turbo system, you can go ahead and look that up. That's readily available online. And if I can keep the wind from blowing my paper away. Anyway, so where was I? So you've got your compressor wheel down and through there, and then your compressor discharge, which is right up and through this area. Pretty much the air is entering your turbo here, going through your compressor housing, and then feeding into your intake here. This is the actual air intake snail, I like to call it, but some people call it the air inlet for the manifold. And if I can hop up here real quick to show you what it looks like a little clearer. That's your actual air inlet for the intake manifold. No difference in these trucks for the intake manifold. All you're doing is you're replacing the actual wing nut bolt with just a standard bolt that comes with this compressor housing and turbo set. If I can get it to focus on here. Anyways, you've just got a bolt here that's got a copper crush washer on it, just like you'd have on a braking system. And then they give you a nice little provision right here to go ahead and run a boost gauge, which is really nice to have. So I'm going to go ahead and hop down real quick without killing myself. All right, so that pretty much covers, you know, your entire cold air system. So, you know, all the way down to compressor wheel, housing, and then your top hat. Now, on the hot side of your turbo, mine's covered up, but you pretty much have your actual turbine housing. And then the turbine is obviously inside the housing on the opposite side of the shaft from the cold side. That there I won't have accessible because this is assembled right now. But you're going to have your turbine housing, which your actual wastegate's going to attach to through this lever right here. And then obviously the wastegate mounts to the cold side of the turbo. Then you're going to have your exhaust inlet, that is this pipe right here. This is a large cast iron pipe that actually has a Y fitting down here that it attaches to and then goes up to your actual turbine housing. That's fed by this manifold right here, which is your passenger exhaust manifold, and then fed by this pipe right here that replaces your factory Y pipe on your NA application and leads down this direction to your driver's side manifold. Pretty much it's just an extra little turn, so you don't actually have a Y pipe or anything on a turbo system for the IDI. Now your actual downpipe, which is your exhaust turbine outlet, is right here, if you can see it clearly. And this is a separate pipe. This is actually the beginning of your exhaust pipe. And on factory systems, they were super restrictive, which I'm going to show you right now, because to clear the firewall, they went ahead and they crimped the pipe. So this is the beginning of the downpipe here from the turbine housing coming on down, and then it clamps on here to the beginning of the downpipe. And then as you go down the downpipe, if you notice right here towards the cab, on my 70s truck at least, you'll notice a crimp right there. This is bad news for EGTs. If you're just going to run a factory turbo system and you're not going to do anything to your engine, like crank it up or anything, or, you know, mess around with your fuel screw on your injection pump, this is okay. I have heard of guys running stock motors, though, that have seen up to about a 4 mile per gallon increase in mileage, which is better, by getting rid of this downpipe with a Manx turbo set, which I'll get to when I get to turbo upgrades and all that. But this will come down and actually become your exhaust pipe at the end of it. It just makes a nice little sweep and then ends with a little what do you call it? A little flange on the end of it. So that pretty much covers the hot side of your turbo system. So yeah, I covered your exhaust downpipe and the wastegate. So now here's the other portions of your system I consider to be a supporting portion of the system. First of which is going to be your turbo mounting bracket, which I'm on the wrong side for that, so I'll show you in a second. After that's going to be your oil supply line, which is right here. And then the actual oil supply fitting, which is on the top of your turbo right here, if you notice, with 2 bolts. This is important. Not only does it help to cool your turbo between the 2 sides of the housing, but it also lubricates the shaft as it's a moving part and needs oil. And then with the turbo systems over the NA systems, they actually move your sensor for your oil pressure. So your oil pressure sending unit is actually in a different place. This oil line right here, which I'll move over to show you better, is actually feeding in through the back of your motor right here. and that's where your old oil pressure sending unit was. Now, I like to use the brass fittings that came from the 6.9 to rise up the oil pressure sending unit instead of using the 7.3. Reason for that is the 6.9 hole on the block side is actually smaller than the 7.3 turbo. I don't know if it's smaller than all the NA models, but most of the NA models that I've seen have the larger orifice to go ahead and come out of the block. So you can grab the 7.3 riser, but you're not going to be able to use it on your 6.9 unless you drill that out and tap it. Honestly, I don't see a problem because you're just giving it oil supply, so I don't see a restriction there that's a problem. But anyways, your oil inlet line is going to come up and through the back of the block right here, up and over your turbo, and then into your oil fitting for your turbo. Now, while I'm back here, I'll go ahead and show you that turbo mounting bracket, which actually doubles as your drain for the oil coming out of your turbo. Obviously, it goes in, it has to come out, right? So you've actually got a pedestal mount here that mounts with 2 studs on the turbo side, which is the opposite side. I cannot show you that, really. That's about the best view I'm going to get of it. And this turbo bracket will mount your turbo to the back of the engine where your CDR used to be. It will also allow the oil to drain through a pipe down here that replaces where your CDR was. Now, a lot of guys have a problem with the grommet to replace for your CDR. This turbo, or the turbo oil drain, does not have the same grommet going into your valley pan as what your NA motor has. I don't know why they changed it, but they did. You can no longer get the grommet, and the best solution is just to find a Dodge 360 PCV style grommet for the oil, your what do you call it? Your oil cap breather on a valve cover, and just put that on here to go ahead and just solve that problem. It does fit. I've used them in the past. They work great. I'll try and put a part number up in the annotations when I edit the video. So that pretty much covers that portion. Now, the next thing that you do, or you're going to do when you're modifying the turbo system, is you're going to want to grab both valve covers. Driver valve cover actually has the CDR housed on it. And it actually has a nice little CDR mount, which is going to be really hard for you to see because I have way too much light out here and the shop is full of junk. But, so this is your CDR now. This is the same CDR that you would be mounting on the back of your motor. So you can reuse your old CDR if it's still good. I haven't seen any replacements, but I'm sure there might be somebody out there that is making them already. I usually just boil them and, you know, be over with it to clean out a CDR. The CDR brackets are welded on to the valve cover, if you notice, and then allow you to provision for the bolt for your CDR in the same provision that you would have for the back of your manifold on an NA system. Other than that, valve cover is the same as a regular NA motor, just has the hole for the CDR down here and uses the regular CDR grommet. Now, the opposite side, you are going to want to grab the valve cover for the passenger side of your motor. Reason is that you're going to be putting your glow plug controller here if you have this type. If you have the earlier type, I definitely suggest getting rid of it because you want the controller type that won't burn up your glow plugs and drop them into your cylinders. This will actually shut off if you have a bad glow plug. It actually reads through this control module here whether or not you have enough resistance to have good glow plugs. If you have bad glow plugs, it will then shut this off, and you'll get the clicking noise. You'll just hear click, 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 click when you try and turn on your injection system or your ignition system, and this will not allow the glow plugs to get hot. If you already have this, good, cool, keep it. This controller is the same as the one that mounts to the back of your manifold and the back of the motor. The only thing is you don't want it sitting there because you're going to melt the sucker. So the two solutions that you can do is you can either move this to your firewall or fender well, or you can get this valve cover. This valve cover pretty much just has the provision to bolt on your glow plug controller. This came on turbo models and turbo models only, to my knowledge. I've never seen them on any other motor without somebody swapping it in, but who knows. That pretty much covers all of the accessories that you're going to be getting to complete your turbo set. So your turbo set should, again, I'm just going to do an overview, include obviously the turbo, hot and cold side. It should include the snail here, the bolt to go ahead and put the snail on. It should cover your air intake box, hopefully a filter, and then the top plenum to go into your turbo. Should come with a turbo boot for your turbo to plenum. Obviously you should have a wastegate. You should have the Y pipe here to go ahead and run your exhaust into your turbo. Should have the inlet to go to your turbine side for the Y pipe, which should be all together because that's pretty well pressed together. You should have a J tube that leads from your driver's side to your passenger side. Now, you're going to want the turbo downpipe if you're going to run the stock type turbo. I would also suggest it having it, even if not, because you're paying for it is the way I see it. You should have a clamp for your downpipe right here. The shrouding is nice. You don't have to use it, especially if you're using a coating. I just like to use it on my IDI Swaps because it keeps my firewall from getting hot. There's not a lot of insulation on these trucks. You should have your turbo supply line and all the fittings on the back. You should have your fuel pressure sending unit. And another nice thing to have would actually be the wiring harness here for your glow plugs. They actually made their own engine harness for the glow plug circuit, and most of the rest of the systems, it actually wraps up around your injection pump here. It also does feed your injection pump. If you can see that. I don't know if you can see that or not. We'll also do stuff like your RPM gauge and whatnot. If you actually have that on your truck, I've seen some that don't. It does change the plug on the other end of the harness. Harness will go up and around here and through to the back to feed your other glow plugs. And then you'll get this piece of harness right here, which has a bigger connector than normal harnesses do, which I got a pile of harnesses sitting around to compare to. You do want both sides of this connector. If you don't find it, I have found guys that are selling these connectors and just don't know what they are. I doubt you're going to find one on a turbo system. If you're at a scrapyard, just cut the wire off, get the other side of the connector. It's worth it, because if not, you're going to be trying to find a way to make another connector for this. This harness did come out of this side of the motor and would sit here and then connect to the fender well. Obviously, again, 70s truck didn't come with the turbo or anything else like that either, because it never had a diesel in it. So what I like to do with these is I will actually run them underneath the air intake box, and I will run this plug down into my regular engine control plugs here that just come off the top of the firewall. You know, nice to run them there. Obviously, Zach, that's not going to matter for you because you've got an 80s truck. So the other things that will actually support your turbo system that a lot of people don't know is that it's not just the turbo. You have the injection pump also. Now, this is an NA injection pump. A good way to tell the difference between an NA injection pump is that the NA injection pump will have this same fitting here, and I don't have the regular fitting here, but it'll have another 90-degree fitting that comes up and goes to a large tube. That is also true for some of the early turbo systems, or at least that I've seen. I don't know if that's because people are modifying their non-turbo 732 turbo or what it is, but sometimes you'll have the large tube that comes up and runs down the driver's side injector rail area. Now, in an IDI turbo, at least in 94, late 93, and I'm guessing most of 93, if that's not modified units that I've seen, you'll have another 90-degree fitting that comes up and just has a nipple for the little tiny hoses that are the same as your regular injection lines for your return. If you've never seen those, that's about the size of the line right here. I mean, these are little tiny lines. And we'll just have a line that comes up through here, down through here, and will feed into your injection return system. Another piece of the injection return system that is completely different with the IDI turbo, and I have to hop up on the truck to show you, is this fitting. Since you're getting rid of the large tube that comes up and through here and feeds out your injection return line, you need to replace it with this T right here. This is a two-way T. I have seen a three-way T now. I was talking to a gentleman on one of the Ford groups on Facebook, and he actually managed to show me one that he has. Now, I can't take that hose off, even though it's a cruddy thing. But this pretty much just bolts up to where your engine loop is to go ahead and lift it out. And just has a regular T, which I'll try and show you right now. And this T right here just has an outlet fitting here, or an inlet fitting here to go into the T, and then an outlet to go into your regular return line for your return system. Like I said, I have seen another version that has a third nipple down here, and I think it was an earlier version, and that actually goes underneath the turbo. I would avoid that like the plague. I would grab the fitting, but I would not run your injection line underneath your turbo. That's, in my opinion, the worst place to put it. You're exposing it to all kinds of vibration back there by going underneath the turbo, and you could actually cut your line by running it from this injection line on out down to the other side of the turbo. Plus, you're also exposing it to the one place where you have all of this heat. So you're going to dry out your line, and eventually you're going to lead to leaks, and then you're going to have diesel shooting all over your exhaust, and it's just going to suck. The better way to run it is to run a T on your injector here next to the turbo and run it up and around your intake, and then to the opposite side and tee it off there. Sometimes you can find those T's, sometimes you can't. If not, you could probably modify this T right here, this is the NT for the turbo. I managed to find the actual turbo fittings and just run the line out here and then up and around the turbo and over. You're a lot better off with that. So I've already covered the injection pump. Now, the other thing with the injection pump too is that the turbo system actually has a torque screw. I don't have one to show you because unfortunately my turbo pump right now is gone. I didn't manage to grab it, and I'm kind of kicking myself in the ass for that. But I do have a friend of mine that should have one that I can get from him. Anyway, so there is an external torque screw adjustment for the turbo pump. Now, you don't have to have it. You can adjust these pumps. They're perfectly fine. It's just a big pain in the butt. And I'm not talking about the regular fuel screw. This will change the timing of your fueling at the low end and help you to kind of build a little bit, well, the proper amount of boost that you need for it, not just like doing regular injection pump timing. You also do want to do injection pump timing for your turbo. I don't have the tool to show you here how to do that right now, but pretty much it's just a little adapter to go into your regular timing light, and you can hook it up to your injector number 1. You can use an NA pump. That's perfectly fine. I'm going to get into aftermarket pumps in a minute here. That pretty much covers all of that. Upgrades. When you're running these turbos, they do tend to get a lot hotter than an intercooled system. Reason why? You're not cooling the intake air. If you notice, the turbo with the outlet here on the cold side is actually going straight into your intake. Well, this turbo is getting hot. It's not getting as hot as the exhaust side, but it is getting hot. So you're exposing your intake to all of that extra heat. Now, a really good solution to that is to run an intercooler. Yeah, you're going to get a little bit of turbo lag from an intercooler because you've got all that extra piping that's leading all the way from here and feeding your turbo from an intercooler in front of your radiator. But that's going to actually help you keep your EGTs low, and it's going to help to keep your intake air lower in temperature. So you're actually going to benefit more, in my opinion, by running the intercooler than you would by not. Now, for now, I'm not running the intercooler, but I do have the full intention to. On previous builds that I've done for friends on 80s trucks and actually one 70s truck, I set them up on the Hypermax intercooler. Now, the thing with the Hypermax intercooler is that it is a 7.3 factory turbo intercooler. It was designed for the 93 to 94 turbo system, and actually specifically for this turbo system. And from what I've seen, it works great. I've had no problem with it, with installing it or anything. It comes with all the turbo piping that you need. It comes with all of the boots that you need. It comes with an all-new wastegate that, if I remember right, is modified, but I'm not 100% on that. The price tag is a little hefty at $1,500, but they do advertise 30% more power, which I have noticed a little bit of a difference. I don't know if it's 30% per se, but I've definitely noticed a little bit of a difference with the intercooler. They do say it does 5% better fuel economy. I do not doubt that, because you're lowering your EGTs by roughly 300 to 350 degrees. You know, you lower your EGTs, you're better off. You lower your intake manifold temperatures, you're also better off, because you're able to burn better. Cold air equals denser air, which equals more air and more burn, or in this case, explosion. So the way I figure it, the $1,500 really is not that bad. Especially if you look at the Gale Banks systems and all that. Gale Banks did make a system, I don't know if they still do, that works on the Ford Factory turbo system. The Gale Banks system is only about $200 less. You don't get as good at piping. It doesn't look like you get as good at boots. If you like Banks, sure, go with it. Why not? But honestly, I'm not a fan. I'd rather just go with the Hypermax. Hypermax seems to make a better unit, and like I said, I like their piping a little better. Some of the wider radiators won't work. In my case, I don't have to worry about that. I've got a smaller radiator. The difference in the 70s trucks was height, not really width. So that's always an option. Go intercooler, which honestly, intercooler is the way to go if you're going to go with a turbo injection pump that's hopped up. Perfect example of that is R&D IDI Performance, Justin Anderson. This is one of the few guys that I'll actually give a shout out. Everything that I've ever gotten from him, everything that I've ever gotten information-wise and product-wise has been great. I haven't bought as many injection pumps as I'd like, but I've been helping out with Robert Bronco's build, and it's actually, he's got just great customer service. He has all the information you'll ever need. You know, you can run his 80cc pump without an intercooler on just a basic turbo system, or even on an NA system, from what I understand, which he just came out with the 80cc. Or you can run up to the 90cc pump and go ahead and run yourself a nice intercooler, which he does suggest. You know, if you're going to hop up your pump to 90, 100, 110, you know, 150 cc's, yeah, you're gonna want an intercooler, man. You're putting a lot of frickin' fuel in there. You got to cool that sucker off. So I don't suggest it without that. He also does through R&D IDI Performance provide you a compressor wheel upgrade. The compressor wheel upgrade is great. I have no problems with it. I have not seen anybody run it yet, but pretty much what he's doing is he's doing the GT 3574, if I remember right. It's an upgrade. He's running a 61 by 82 millimeter compressor wheel, and then it's the 74 by 65, if I remember right, turbine wheel. I didn't actually write that down here for myself, but it just runs about $900 if you still want to run the turbo system. And all you do is you just send him in your core, send him in your turbo real quick. He's doing pretty much a freshen up on your turbo and then upgrading the compressor wheel. You know, usually he charges, I think it's about $400 to freshen up a turbo. So I mean, if you figure you're sending it in already, you may as well send out the extra $500 and just upgrade it while you're there. He does say that it supports up to 150cc pump. I do believe him on that, and I would stand by that statement. You can visit Justin at idiperformance.com also, so I just have to give him a shout out because, like I said, he's been a great guy, full of information, and yeah, he's just made some stuff that's really brought us into something new for IDIs. The Gale Banks downpipe, before I forget, the downpipe does not have that crimp in there like I was telling you about from your compressor housing. I have not installed one yet. I have seen one used. I do not remember how it mounts. If I remember right, it clamps on still to your original your downpipe system. So if I remember right, it retains the factory clamp, but I cannot tell you that for sure because I have not installed one myself. That one will drop your EGTs and give you at least 4 mile per gallon gain. That's through Gale Banks. They still do sell that. You're going to walk away with it for about $120. That's counting your delivery fees. And that costs or no, I'm sorry. Anyways, that's a part number 52103 from Gale Banks. I would suggest it. I would scream at you if you didn't run one, because running that crimp right there, unless you have a reason to keep your firewall where it's crimped right there, is, I mean, it's minor. Yeah, I mean, I think that pretty well covers it. You know, I've gotten pretty much everything you need to do. The only thing that I could really add is just when you get your turbo system, make sure that you check this compressor wheel. A lot of guys will go to a scrap yard and they will not grab this compressor wheel and move it around. You always want to make sure that you don't have up and down play, which this has a little tiny bit, but that's just the lack of oil inside here. You probably can't even see it on the camera. You want to check your movement on both ends too, just to make sure you don't have ovaled out bearings or anything like that. And you always want to check to see if your compressor wheel will actually spin freely, which this one does. I can't really put a lot of pressure on it. You want to watch it stop a little bit, and you want to make sure that the compressor wheel isn't actually grinding into the housing. You can do that by pushing on it and trying to give it a little bit of a spin and just see if it grinds. This one will not. If you have a lot of compressor end shaft play, you probably have a bad exhaust side. There's a lot of different things that can cause issues in turbos, but if you're going to walk away with a turbo, especially from a scrapyard, check it first, please, because if not, you could be buying a crapped out turbo and you're paying money for it. This turbo system, like I said earlier, you can get turbo systems for $200 to $500 online. I lucked out with this. I got the entire assembly for $150 from a pick and pull out here. I found a 94 truck. I saw this underneath there. Again, I didn't grab the injection pump. I wish I had. I kind of tried to stash it away and somebody grabbed it. So if that was you, good play, sir. But for a complete unit at $150, especially for a good turbo, this was a steal. I robbed them of this. You know, everything, including all the shrouding and all of that. They obviously did not know what they had. A find like that, good luck. If you find it, cool, you know, all the more power to you, but don't expect to be paying $150 for it. So that pretty much wraps this up. I'll go ahead and I'll give you guys updates on the build and whatnot. I didn't get the build in the beginning because, quite frankly, I didn't really feel like videotaping, and it was winter when I started. You can go ahead and I'll put a link again to the build page for the truck in the description below. And if you have any questions or you're curious about anything for all of these conversions, feel free to hit me up. I've done, you know, several of them. This is probably close to about my 30th or 40th build. Anything from small stuff to welding up motor mounts for somebody, all the way down to doing the entire swap. You know, I got a lot of cool little custom mounts and stuff like that I've built, and you guys might be interested. So other than that, you guys have a great one, and yeah, if you're doing a swap, cool, dude. Keep it up.